Good morning, everyone. Sunday morning on the 16th of September, coming up on 9 o'clock Eastern Time. I'm Joe Chaffee, and thanks for being here on this Sunday as we're going to take a look at Florence, which it's amazing in so many respects how this system that made landfall in near Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, not too far from Wilmington, North Carolina, Thursday morning at 7:30, and here we are, Friday morning, Saturday morning, Sunday morning, 72 hours later, and we're still dealing with a storm that has barely moved a little bit over the 125 miles from that landfalling position. Uh, Starting to see some signs of it moving along a bit faster, but when you look at the radars, you're going to notice that, well, they kind of still look the same as they were back on Thursday. The rainfalls have been uh, un, just unrelenting. I think that's the best word for it. There have been 30-inch plus amounts reported in areas near Wrightsville, near Wilmington, and also not too far from Morehead City, North Carolina. And this is going to be the fourth day of rain in the same general area. It really is not going to be until Wednesday where there will probably not be a drop of rain going on anywhere in North Carolina. We're going to have to wait till then for the remnant low of Florence to move up the Appalachians and then across the Northeast and out, which it's going to do between now and Tuesday. This is also going to spread some heavy rains now into western Virginia, parts of West Virginia. We've seen the rain has moved into western North Carolina, and now we're going to start to see that move northward. We also are going to talk today about Tropical Storm Helene, which is out in the northeastern Atlantic. It just moved through the Azores yesterday, or just passed near the Azores, and now it's got its sights on Ireland as it will be moving ashore, and we've got some satellite loops, and we'll look at the models with respect to that. We also are going to look at a little bit of history today, as today is the anniversary of the what's called the Great New England Hurricane, or the Long Island Express, and that is the hurricane of 1938. It is 80 years ago today that a Category 3 hurricane, one of only two Category 3 hurricanes to make landfall up in this part of the world that we know of, that and Hurricane Carol in 1954. The rest, there have been a smattering of ones and twos along the way, and they've all done substantial things, as they often evolve into they sort of morph into post-tropical or extratropical storms. Well, we'll take a look at a little bit about that, and I can direct you if you want to, at that point, want to look at some other things regarding that storm and others. Oh, look, it's two of me. I am real, by the way. Rumors to the contrary, I do exist. So before we, just really fast before we get started, I know a number of you have joined me on my Patreon platform that I've created here. There is a link that's probably floating around on this video somewhere that'll pop up if you're interested. And I'll put a link on the chat board. But basically, I've put everything that I do in one place for everyone to go to in what is an ad-free experience, and also what is a troll-free experience. It's just going to be, it's all the folks that are interested to come on. You can also use the Patreon app to download posts from my website, for example, among other things. And there'll be videos once we get through all this hurricane stuff, and I can time it out, and we've got a nice crowd of people in there now. I'll be doing videos directly just for Patreon members, and you get notified of every single thing I do. No more missing notifications. I've been notifying folks that I've got YouTube live streams coming up even before YouTube notifies you. And I know those of you that are on Facebook have had issues with regards to notifications that we've discussed. So The link is on there on the chat. Feel free. Just $2 a month is where it starts at, and there's some other tiers in there. And the other thing is, you get to message me if you need to talk to me for whatever reason, and I will respond to you in a very timely manner, I assure you. So let's get going here. We're going to start with the satellite loop, and then we're going to go to the radars and a few other things. You can, I got to find that. There it is. There's the local radar I want. Let me bring that up to the top here. And okay, so Florence is a tropical depression at this point. That really doesn't matter too much at this stage of the game, because we're still getting part of the circulation over the waters of the Atlantic, and that's all been coming in inland. But you look at the satellite signature, when we go to the visible part of the loop, it's expanded in terms of the cloud shield. It still has that circulation going, and that is now going to start to move its way northward up the Appalachians, which means that we're going to begin to see rains spreading northward up into parts of into Western Virginia, West Virginia, and it's already into Western North Carolina. This is the Wilmington, North Carolina radar, which really looks just like it did yesterday, folks. It's astounding how that is the case. But there's been absolutely no change, except for the fact that some of the rains that have been going on near the coast in South Carolina, that rain has diminished, and that is a good thing. And we are going to see the rain continuing to push in toward the north and west. Rainfall amounts have been there have been two max areas that we've heard of. One near the Wilmington, North Carolina area, and the other that is near the Morehead City. And both those areas have reported well over 30 inches, and I'm sure there are some places that have gotten amounts even higher. This has been an epic rain producer. They're saying that this takes out some of the rainfall records that go back to 1945. And by the way, here is the Storm Prediction Center's view of all of this, with a slight risk of severe. And the red box tornado watch is up again for the third straight day. Actually, now the fourth time. I think this is maybe the fourth tornado watch in the last 4 calendar days for North Carolina. And it's going to be another busy day of severe weather as you start to see all this stuff flaring up. So how this looks on the full U.S. radar, there it is. And we can show you that rain here now into all of North Carolina except the northeastern corner. Some of the back edge rains have moved into eastern Tennessee and into extreme northeastern Georgia. Looks like some of the back end showers, you might see a shower or two make its way down into Atlanta today. But that's really just about it. But it's a solid rain across all of North Carolina, now also into southern Virginia and at the Kentucky-West Virginia border. There's nothing of consequence really going on south of the center, which is moving its way into northwestern North Carolina, South Carolina here. You're getting some bands of heavier rain to the east of that in South Carolina, but it's also moved off the coast. It's really North Carolina, though, that in southeastern North Carolina that just continues to be in this one large feeder band that's coming in from off the Atlantic, and that shows no signs of breaking down today. It really is going to start to improve as we move through Monday and Tuesday, where you're probably going to see the rains diminish somewhat as the core circulation moves away. But I really think it's not going to be until Wednesday when you can finally see the first day where there's no rain going on anywhere in the great state of North Carolina. And who knows what some of these top rainfall amounts are going to wind up being. The tight radar view from Wilmington, all those green boxes, all still flash flood warnings up, and you could also see the dark reds that show up the darker reds that show up on the radar echoes, it's from those that you could wind up seeing tornado a tornado warning come up. I'm going to just freshen this loop a bit. I just want to see, because sometimes those tornado warnings, they basically flash on and off. Um, and they could last as little as several minutes, or we had one yesterday that went on for over an hour, and all of that just moving right along and lifting up to the northwest. This, by the way, is the Wilmington, North Carolina radar. Uh, I want to just show you some of these rain totals. Now, this goes back only to Friday. So this is from 11 p.m. Friday to 9 a.m. this morning. It does not include the rain that fell from landfall Thursday morning to 11 p.m. Friday. And just since this time frame, which is basically about almost 36 hours, you've had 15 plus inches of rain in the Wilmington area and in all that purple shading. And there are even a few dots of the darker purple where the rainfall amounts have been in excess of 20 inches. Again, this does not include the rain from Thursday morning into 11 p.m. Friday night. I wish they had left it for a full site. And the Morehead City, North Carolina, did leave it, but unfortunately, their radar is down temporarily for maintenance, so we can't see it at this point. And I think this is also a good opportunity to remind everybody that the radars that you are seeing here are obviously dated. So if you're watching this on a replay later this morning or this afternoon, to please check with your local National Weather Service office, especially if you're in North Carolina, you need to do this. And you can access that by going to weather.gov. The Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina radar is showing a broad area. That whole area where you see down in southeastern North Carolina in terms of total rainfall amounts, and this goes back to landfall roughly 7:44 a.m. Thursday to 8:59 a.m. Sunday. The area in white is all 15 inches or more in southeastern North Carolina, and the red area, the darkest red area, is 8 inches. That extends almost to Raleigh-Durham. The 5-inch lighter red is north and west of Raleigh, almost touching Durham, North Carolina. So the rainfall through much of North Carolina. Raleigh's about 150 miles inland. Anywhere from 5 to 8 inches of rain. Again, always adding that caveat so far. And when we go down, you can see the area down into parts of South Carolina with the rainfall amounts, 2 to 3 inches in the Myrtle Beach area. And then you get into the higher amounts as you get closer to the South Carolina, North Carolina border and some of the bordering counties where you've got 5 to 8 inches of rain, again, so far. We'll take a radar trip down, go south of there. This is from the Columbia, South Carolina radar view, and actually from their Doppler radar view, which is, I think, probably a bit more accurate with the areas in South Carolina. Myrtle Beach is in the 5 to 8 inch zone. You got to be a little careful with the Doppler radar storm totals on the edges because of the the fact that it kind of loses it just a little bit. Somebody take a look. Hang on. Let's take a look if I can get this long range. I can actually get the wider view loop. I can't really get a storm total loop on the wide view, which would be better because then they would combine everything. But again, the rainfalls even into South Carolina so far have been on the order of 8 to 10 inches. And we can switch back now to look at the actual rain. That's the current radar view with the flash flood warnings again in the green boxes. And here is the loop of said radar. Make this a little bit bigger for you. There's the loop of said radar. Maps courtesy of the National Weather Service with these radars, and they've done this. I think they've done an absolutely spectacular job from this, and the National Hurricane Center has done an absolutely spectacular job. And you know, that's good to that is a good confident feeling to know going forward. The Florence, the Hurricane Center got the landfalling point 48 hours out to within 2 miles. That's incredible. I've been mentioning this for the last couple of days. That's an incredible accomplishment, and you know, amazing how far we've come on that in the last 20 or 30 years. The forecasts are getting better and better, and yet we still have issues with regarding people paying attention to all of this stuff. Radar view going to the north, and again, all the range is just going on and on and on. So this is a view back to the actual rain that's falling in the Raleigh door in the North Carolina, going into northern and western parts of North Carolina. I'm going to go further north because today's risk area is going to push up into parts of Virginia, where we're not seeing too much happening in the eastern part of the state, but there might be some action going on in the west. And this is the Blacksburg, Virginia radar, which will take us into the Blue Ridge Mountains. And we're starting to see some rains moving up into parts of western Virginia and also back into eastern Tennessee. And you can see they're moving up toward the northwest. A few downpours surrounding parts of Roanoke. Trying to see there's not a whole lot happening in and around Lynchburg, but this area is going to see their rains increasing as we go through the day. The risk with respect to flash flooding, much how we always look at the Storm Prediction Center's severe weather risk. You can get this from our National Hurricane Center's website, nhc.noaa.gov. So this is the flash flood risk. So they do kind of the same idea, marginal, slight, moderate, and high. This runs through 8 a.m. Monday. So for Western Virginia, you can see that there's a moderate to high risk of flash flooding for a sizable chunk of that area. I've been focusing a lot of attention here because one of our regulars on both here on YouTube and on Facebook with Johnny Quest is from that area. He has he's been on here all summer describing the incessant rains that have been going on there, with many areas getting as much as 6 times the normal rainfall for the summer months. And the area is just absolutely a swampland. And flash flooding is not, it will occur very quickly here. Once some of the heavier rains get in, rivers are are full. There was a serious threat of one of the dams near Lynchburg breaking back a month or so ago. That was fortunately averted when the rains kind of took a break for a couple of days. But this is something that's going to have to be watched very, very closely for that particular area. Do we have the also just to we'll look at the rainfall forecasts again. I kind of concur with these numbers. You know, just like in snowfall, when you start to get above, excuse me, a certain snowfall amount in a forecast, it sort of becomes a little bit meaningless. So you start to go from inches to feet, and it's a concept that is very, very difficult sometimes to just understand when in many areas, like this is a once in a lifetime occurrence or once in a generational occurrence anyway. But these are the additional rainfall amounts on top of what was already on top of what already has fallen in West Virginia and in Western Virginia and points north and east. This is for rain yet to come today, tomorrow, and into Tuesday. So we're talking 4 to 6 and 6 to 10 inch amounts pushing up into Western Virginia, and the 2 to 4 inch amounts pushing up further north. The way things are looking with respect to this remnant low, because we don't really have the upper air jet stream giving this a little bit of extra added punch, where the remnant surface low might start picking up some energy from the northern stream, the northern part of the jet stream. the rainfall amounts will probably be reasonable across Pennsylvania and into southern New England for Monday night and Tuesday. There are some 2 and 4 inch amounts being indicated for parts of upstate New York and central New England. That's north of the low center and kind of makes sense. When the low goes out, it'll off the New England coast, it's probably going to intensify a bit, and that could have some impact for Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, which we'll touch on in momentarily. So we're going to go to the weather models. And by the way, I haven't forgotten about you, Helene, folks. I got everything. You folks in Ireland that are watching from Ireland and from England and Scotland. I'm following. I got everything in order in how I'm going to do this. So let me. I just want to check real quick. You're seeing the map. You're seeing the date and time. These maps courtesy of tropicaltidbits.com, Levi Cowan's great website. There's the remnant low on the GFS that moves up into eastern Kentucky by 2 a.m. You still see those bands of rain in North Carolina and South Carolina, although in the eastern part of the state, as you move northeast of Morehead City, just to be safe, the rains overnight take a break and then come back in tomorrow as the circulation moves north and starts to shift eastward. This is Monday afternoon at 2 p.m. At this point, the heaviest rain, the leading edge rains, I'm not too concerned about. The heaviest rain is in that dark green and yellow area shown by the GFS. So the other models are a little different in how they line it up. But I think the general principle here is you just anticipate the risk that there's some heavy downpours possible. And then later Monday night into Tuesday, that rain moves across the northeast. I think the bulk of this could wind up being done for much of the area by early Tuesday afternoon, although the GFS and the European to some extent take a little while longer. The surface low, it looks like it splits. Part of it goes out and part of it drops southward. That wants to prolong some rain into parts of southern New Jersey and over into parts of Delaware and Maryland with that second wave. I don't know if I necessarily believe this. We'll see. But I'm trying to be a little more optimistic on the idea that this just sort of goes out as one system and done. But I have to be a little bit concerning with the fact that the front is sort of lagging behind. And I just wonder, there's some of the models, some of the ensemble members seem to want to keep some a semblance of Florence still on that southern end, but I rate this risk pretty low. Sometimes the models do squirrely things like this, and it really winds up being nonsense. And in fact, if you look as we move ahead in time, going through Wednesday, that wave just basically disappears and doesn't do much of anything. This next high, by the way, something to think about from the standpoint of the forecast issues that we have going forward is that the GFS has been so guilty of making these big highs coming down, and they wind up being nothing like what was originally forecast. And this is a perfect case of this. We barely, we are going to get into some lower humidity, but and lower temperatures, but it's nothing like what was shown earlier. And then that high moves out. Then another front comes through, and then another high tries to build in weekly, and that pulls out. I'm not understanding why the GFS keeps trying to insist that the ridge in the east wants to go away, and the jet stream in Canada wants to drop southward. But I have to tell you, I'm very skeptical going forward in the next couple of weeks. While this is all happening, by the way, we should point out that we are seeing a trough in the west, and we are also seeing some snow showing up in parts of southwest Canada, and also showing up in parts of southeastern Canada, because once you go north, as the upper air in the east weakens, as that jet stream in Canada starts to take a little bit of gain a little bit of strength and at least flatten the jet in the east. It's very, very tight. You see how the closer the lines are together. So there's a strong west to east jet moving across southern Canada. The ridge flattens, but it doesn't go away. It just kind of sits there down in the lower Mississippi Valley. You see it here. a trough in the west, a trough offshore in the east, and then the ridge builds back in the east late next week. But you've got a tight jet in Canada, and you do have short waves that move through every once in a while. They just don't make for deep troughs in the east. It's a fast flow. Trough moves out, ridge pops back up, trough moves in, ridge pops back up. The one thing about this pattern going forward, by the way, which is a good thing, is that you do have the jet in Canada far enough south where it's having impact. So the ridge in the east pops up. It gets warm for a day or so, and we also are now into the latter part of September, so warm is a relative term. And then you get a front to come through, and that is, that puts an end to that. So at least it's not getting oppressive. Okay, so now we're going to switch over in terms of the focus of our attention. And I'm going to just move this map out of the way. And we're going to start talking about Tropical Storm Helene, which is bound for Ireland. And there is the wide satellite view, so you can see everything that's going on. Notice the tropical Atlantic right now has gone quiet. Usually when you have an active period like we've just had, you wind up with a bit of quiet time to look forward to. We do have Florence inland. You see it there. Obviously, in North Carolina, the tropical system, or the upper trough / tropical system that was in the Western Gulf, has moved inland, and that is moving its way up into northern and western Texas. Helene is up on the upper right, with Joyce just southwest of that. It still has its own identity there, and models. Some of the models kind of doing weird things with that down the road. I'm not going to focus on that today, because there's just too much going on. So let's go to Helene. Here's how it looks on the visible satellite view that we have from UMET. This is the visible satellite, and Helene is sitting there right in the central Atlantic, almost to 60 degrees north. I'm sorry. Let me take that back. I'm sorry. This is 30, 40, 50 degrees north, and west, it's just outside of 30 degrees west and moving toward the northeast. You'll notice, by the way, if you look where it gets dark, because that's the sun setting, you have a trail of clouds that's east of Ireland and England and Scotland that moves southward, and kind of looks like the systems are almost connected. You've got a big storm that's developing in the North Atlantic, and that is going to eventually absorb all of this with Helene. But Helene maintains an identity right through tomorrow night as it moves through Ireland and goes to the northeast and then north. So it will be making some kind. It looks like it's going to be making some kind of landfall in Southern Ireland. And by the way, much as I tell the folks in the U.S. that they need to go to nhc.noaa.gov, please consult your local National Weather Service offices for you. For Ireland, it's Met Éireann, I believe, or Éireann. A friend of mine who speaks Gaelic, and he says it's Éireann. And for the UK Met, for England, Scotland, Wales, you want to go to your local UK Met office. You go to their website for the latest information regarding watches and warnings. But you see, Helene has got maintains an identity, and Joyce is they're almost moving hand in hand. Eventually, it looks like Joyce is going to separate from Helene, but from Helene's influence. Good example of a little Fujiwara effect going on there too. You can see Helene drops southward to southeastward to some degree as Joyce drops southward, and then Helene moves to the northeast. And again, that North Atlantic storm is really the driver in all of this going forward. So here's how it looks on the GFS when it comes to the surface low and the precip. So we'll move through. The map was for noon Sunday Greenwich time. So we're looking now. We're going to use the time references for Ireland and England. There's Helene This is at midnight tonight. Helene should be somewhere at about 45 and 21. You see France to the east, Portugal to the southeast, and Spain to the southeast, and Ireland to the northeast of Helene. Monday morning, Helene is forecast, the identifiable feature that will be Helene is at 49, 1, and 13.2. And here by 6 p.m., that's at noon on Monday. I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I got the times right. So that's noon on Monday, Greenwich time. And then at 6 p.m. Greenwich time, we have the system onshore in southwestern Ireland with wind and rain. I'm going to let's bring up the sounding. Take a look at least what the GFS is forecasting with some of the winds. I mean, at least here near the low center, a southeast wind at 20 at the bottom of the sounding. That's close to the surface. We'll look at the forecast winds we'll use the 10-meter wind map and take a look at what that has. So the area in yellow, the yellow really probably represents the gales, sustained winds of 20, let's say 28 to 32 knots. And that approaches Ireland by tomorrow morning on the southwest coast. The red areas are all mostly 40 knots sustained or higher. And this doesn't take into account what some of the gusts will be. And that actually misses the southwestern part of the coast, according to the GFS, but touches the southeastern part of the coast by the time the low moves inland, which makes sense. The wind field is going to be shifting eastward, so the strongest winds being on the east side. You've got that darker red touching the southeast coast of Ireland of 40 knots or higher, some stronger winds moving into the Irish Sea. And then the low from here just kind of moves straight northward or northeastward and passes east of England and Scotland as it starts to, at this point, lose its identity, getting absorbed by a bigger storm that's going to be to the north and west of it in the North Atlantic. It's a little hard to see. And then there's another gale that is approaching, by the way, on Wednesday, and this one goes just north of Ireland, but it looks like the wind impact from this could be a bit greater for the western shores of Ireland. And here we have the low to the north of Ireland by Wednesday noontime, and you've got strong winds of 30 to 40 knots sustained or higher in all the waterways surrounding Ireland on both sides and to the west coast of England, and even on the east coast of Scotland, getting some wind. I'm a little curious about that. I'm just going to widen out to see where that comes from. And that might be part of the North Atlantic gale. So there's the system for, that's Helene there. It's up on the upper right in this shot. I'm going to make sure I just changed. Okay, so you can see this. So it's in the upper right. Joyce is actually not part of this. Joyce is that little circle that's down to the southwest of Helene, and it separates from it and then just drops southward. But there's another system that comes out of Canada that swings rapidly off the coast of southeastern Canada, and that intensifies as it moves eastward. So that's that second gale center for later this week for Ireland and England. And then we have that third gale center that, at least for now, the GFS does move off. Now, for those of you in southeastern Canada, we can come back to a tighter view of this just to see what the GFS. I haven't been able to I haven't looked at it the last couple of days, except just in a very sort of cursory way. So I don't have a sense for the trend in what the models were doing. I know the European had a much more vigorous system here with respect to the remnants of Florence, but it may have backed off from it. So let's take a look at what it does. And there's the low. Yeah, it doesn't really develop it as strongly as it did. It does pass it south of Nova Scotia and looks like well south of Newfoundland rather than lifting it up. and it actually keeps much of the rain um, to the south. Also, by the way, notice some snow there up in Labrador and southern parts of Labrador. With that's the low that you see there moving through Newfoundland is not Florence. That's the low that I was referring to. That second gale that develops for the North Atlantic. So for you folks in southeastern Canada, it appears, at least from what we're seeing right now, I don't know that it's going to change that much, but that the impact from Florence looks to be minimal, or at least if that thing does develop, it's not going to be the type of system that's it's not coming up as a tropical system, and as we said, it doesn't seem to be the upper air energy in the northern part of the jet stream that you would see in a situation where you'd wind up with a deepening low. So that at least is good news. I want to do a little bit on the 38 hurricane, but before we do that, I want to also come back to you guys on the board this morning. It's a Sunday morning, so I figured there'd probably be less of you on here. No shock there. I'm just again going to just put the Patreon link for those of you who are interested in joining up. I'm just scrolling back on the chat. Some of you did come on early today, and I usually have the board up so I can see, your comments, and I have commented on whatever you put up. Sebastian P., who's up near the Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina area, chatted earlier about the fact that many major roads are closed due to either flooding or downed trees. Winds are only gusting to about 30 miles an hour, but the ground is so saturated it doesn't take much to take down a tree. And that is, a good reminder. That is certainly the case. The saturated grounds are so saturated that yeah, basically a puff of wind could take down a tree anywhere at any time. The worst areas hit are central North Carolina coast and into inland in central North Carolina and all points south towards northern South Carolina, as certainly evident by what you may have seen on TV. The death toll now is 13 and probably going to rise. I have to tell you, I am curious. There are a lot of people that didn't leave the Outer Banks, and I'm going to be curious to see what their reactions are and whether they would go through this again. Because a number of them, and I mentioned yesterday as I was watching one of the network news operations, they actually had someone that Skyped from the Outer Banks of North Carolina who decided to stay, and the reason for their decision was the fact that a couple of years ago when they went through Hurricane Matthew, it wasn't that bad. And that is probably the number one excuse that people use when they find themselves staying for a tropical system and then regretting it. We stayed because this is how it was the last time, so we thought it would be the same way this time. And it just doesn't work that way. This was completely different from Matthew in terms of the approach of the storm. It came in from the east. Matthew came in from the south. Matthew didn't stall. It kept on moving. This one was walking at less than 4, 3, and even 2 miles an hour while it's been inland. Totally different situation. You cannot use prior experience to make a decision. Past performance is no indicator of future results, and this is a really good example of that. David R., I did see the Mike Seidel video. Yes, it was hilarious. There was also one from Dallas that I saw that was also pretty funny with rescue guys on a rowboat going down a flooded street, and then just next to them, this rather short dog just walking through the water, splashing away, showing that the water wasn't really that deep. Although apparently where the rescuers were, it was, but it was just sort of funny. 99 Wolves, the flat earthers have disappeared because I've gotten rid of them. And in fact, I actually went through some of my videos in the library where folks could comment, and there were a number of inappropriate comments, and I got rid of them too, those people too. And I have no patience. I've actually had patience way too long for leaving people on here that I shouldn't have, and that's my fault. I'd like to have an open, if you want to look at this channel as my house, my door is always open. But it is my house, and I don't want that I don't want that kind of conversation here. Take it to someplace, to somebody else's house where you talk about that sort of stuff. It's just not appropriate for this for my channel. So I started taking those people off, and that is what I'm going to do. By the way, watching from Long Island, Deer Park Library at 1 o'clock. I will be there, so if you want to come out, although I don't blame you if you don't, because the weather here is so absolutely astounding. Ruin Nation. We won't know. With the death toll, yeah, we're probably not going to know until they can gain access to areas that they can't get to right now, including the Outer Banks. Christina Davis telling us that the death toll is now 14. The moisture train, Ruin Nation, exactly, is unrelenting. Stephanie Sparks, thank you for joining the Patreon platform. I really appreciate it. Edward Bowers, thank you for being concerned about it. Sounds like I have a cold. No, I don't wake up well this time of year with the humidity being on the upside, and it's been like this for days. I'm not, constantly in air-conditioned environments, and that's not good for me. So it sort of takes its toll after a while, and maybe a little bit of allergy stuff going on. Although I really don't suffer too much from that, but it all clears up in another hour or two. I'll be fine. I haven't actually been outside yet. Usually, once I get outside, I'll be okay. Marion Reed, welcome aboard. Thank you for being here. William Abate, how much rain can we expect here in New Jersey? I think for our area, we're going to probably have 2 rounds of downpours to deal with, and they shouldn't last all that long, and that we're going to wind up with about 1 to 2 inches. I don't think the remnants are going to be a big deal, mainly because the low doesn't really do anything. The remnant low just kind of moves along. There might be some isolated higher amounts if there's a core circulation that's identifiable on the satellite radar, and there probably will be. So if somebody gets under that heavier downpour, there could be some locally higher amounts, but the general area of rainfall, I'm thinking in terms of amounts, will be about 1 to 2 inches. I appreciate Mike Aculin. Thank you for everything. Hope I don't hear from you until next year. Well, yeah, we could always hope that this is the last one, but we know that there's still time ahead for another tropical system somewhere along the line. Some New England News Network Facebook page said the Northeast is getting snow this week. Can we say hashtag fake news? Are they starting this already? My God, what, on some mountaintop in what? I didn't, with some mountaintop on Mount Washington? Stop. God Almighty. Do we really need this? They're looking. This is what they're doing. I showed you the GFS with there's the snow up in Labrador. I honestly, and you wonder, in a way, I almost can't blame for people, when they kind of try to, when they throw me in with into the same bathwater that all these other places with their stupid crap that they put up with respect to weather. It's just astounding to me. I'm not shocked that they do it. If someone is watching me for the first time and they sort of make the assumption until they see my approach with things, but shake my head. SMH. I hear on Wednesday after Helene will be hit by, you have another, Veronica Reese. Yes, you do have a second Gale Center that is going to be coming along for Wednesday. That one actually might wind up producing more in the way of wind and rain than Helene, believe it or not, because of it coming in. It looks like it's coming in straight from the from west to east. It looks like the second one might be a bit worse than Helene is. So you do have a bit of a 1-2 punch to deal with. So yeah, pay attention to your local weather service offices for sure. The Northeast, the New England News Network. They posted it on Thursday. This needs to stop. It hasn't even, the winter hasn't even started yet. The fall hasn't even started yet, and they're already starting with this nonsense. It never goes away. Ali is the name for your second storm behind Helene. Okay, I will definitely remember that as we go for it. Philip Neary couldn't find the 700 version you mentioned, called it around place. It's a tough, um, it's a tough smoke to find. If you get one, any other LaFleur that's a 60 ring gauge, Philip, I'm good with it. Okay, and I'm just good with the fact that you're actually doing that. Thank you very much. If you get it with the 60 ring gauge with the LaFleur, it's great. Scott Briller is going to be at the Springfield Library. That's going to be my library talk, my first one in New Jersey, and that's coming up in Wednesday, October 17th. And I'll be talking more about that here and on my Patreon page. And if you're out in New Jersey, come on out. This is going to be a test for me driving out there on a weekday, dealing with the traffic. So if my experience is reasonable, we would love to do more Jersey libraries. You could let your local library know that I'm available and to get in touch with me, and we could see if we could book a date. Ethan Kerr, a man died in Seaside Heights yesterday from the rough surf from Florence. I was down on the South Shore of Long Island yesterday. I did a couple of live streams on Facebook, and I put a couple of pictures up. The surf up here by afternoon, there were some sizable waves coming in, some 4 to 6 footers, but I didn't notice anything, higher than that. The water seemed much rougher on Saturday. I'm Friday. So it looked like the surf did come down a little, but by no means was it safe. It's also, there are no lifeguards on a lot of the Long Island beaches, even on the weekends here. Some of them have them, some of them don't. Smith Point, where I went, is a Suffolk County park. It's a county park, so their lifeguards were done Labor Day weekend. The state-run parks like Robert Moses and Jones Beach, I believe, and double check this, I believe that they have lifeguards. This is the last weekend of lifeguards being on duty. Yeah, I had folks going in the water. We had folks going in the water yesterday that I saw. Definitely, you're taking a very big risk doing it without a lifeguard. Even for the best of swimmers, when it comes to riptides, it's tough. Is the African wave train closed for the season? Asked Scott Briller. It might not be, but it may also be a bit late in the game. There might be room for time for one more. But we're running long in the tooth here. Let's go and look at the anniversary of the 38 hurricane. So bring up that window here. Hang on one second. We'll bring up that window. And I'm going to start off. This was kind of interesting to me. This is actually, back in the day when we didn't have YouTube and we didn't have Google and all the rest of it, but we have Google now, so we can find this sort of stuff. But this is what a weather map looked like in 1938 of the plot of the storm. And this was, you wouldn't have this available to you beforehand unless you actually worked for the Weather Service, which is very interesting indeed. You guys can see that. That's a good thing. But this is pretty much all they had of it. And in fact, most people didn't even know it was coming in southern New England, except for fishermen who knew something was going on. There was, very little information, which caught a lot of people flat-footed. And the result was a Category 3 hurricane that came racing into Long Island and then made a second landfall near Bridgeport, east of Bridgeport in Connecticut, and then turned over Rhode Island. Much of the destructive activity was along and east of the center. But here's the track of the storm in the history, coming off the African coast on September 9th, strengthening to a Category 4 hurricane on the 17th, and actually briefly became a Category 5 hurricane just east of the Bahamas on the 20th. And it was 48 hours later that it made landfall. Look at where it was, where the number 21 is, just east of the Florida coast, and where the number 22 is in Vermont. Okay, it moved that distance in 24 hours. That is, about 1,200 plus miles. So you're talking this thing racing up the East Coast at roughly at the point it was approaching Long Island, it was moving in excess of 60 miles an hour. So you had sustained winds, and it came in as a Category 3 with 115-mile-an-hour winds. So you certainly had gusts. I'm sure you had gusts every bit of 140, 150 in some places east of the center. The death toll on Long Island, I believe, was 51, and I believe the entire death toll was about 500. I mean, I'm doing stuff off the top of my head, which I shouldn't do, but there are a number of great statistics about it. If you go to the National Weather Service website for Long Island and New York City, which is weather.gov/OKX, they have a page dedicated to the 80th anniversary of the 38 hurricane, and including damage photos here that you can see for Long Island. Bridgehampton on Long Island was particularly hard hit. There's so many photos of some of the destruction that occurred. See if I can bring this full screen. Again, this is all courtesy of the weather.gov/OKX, and these are some of the pictures in the Hamptons and East Hampton, pre-Kardashian days, folks. But you can also probably find a lot on some of the other websites in New England. Check the Boston website. More than likely, you'll see quite a bit there from the anniversary, because Rhode Island was particularly hard hit. And this is Saltaire, which is on Fire Island, and the destruction that occurred in this area. There was a lot of fishing. There's still quite a bit of fishing here on Long Island, commercial as well as those of us who live here who like to fish. And at that time, there was a very big commercial fishing industry on Long Island, and you can find all sorts of stories regarding this. So check out those two websites. Check out the website on weather.gov/OKX for the 38 hurricane for the Long Island part of it, and take a look at the Boston website, which would be weather.gov/box. And I'm sure that I didn't look specifically, but I'm sure that there's some 38 hurricane stuff there. When was the last time, asked Ethan Kerr, a strong hurricane moved up the coast into Long Island and southern New England? Bob, Hurricane Bob in '91 kind of skimmed the South Shore. That was a Category 3 that went over Block Island. It came up, just touched the South Shore of Long Island, and kind of bounced off and straddled the South Shore coast. So we never really got into, parts of Long Island got into the core, but it was really Block Island that got the hardest. Gloria is probably the last one that moved the shore on Long Island, but you want to be careful about this, because geographically Long Island is also Brooklyn and Queens. So if you use that definition, then you have to then you go to Irene, but then again, Irene had just weakened to a tropical storm right before landfall. So I guess it was Gloria in '85 being the last hurricane to make a direct hit to Long Island. Can you explain why it is that the clouds shown at night are less dense with water, thus the light showing or the reflection of the sun showing the clouds during the day with the satellite shots? On those night shots, by the way, those lights that you see are the big cities, and that has to do with the fact of the beautiful and wonderful detail that we can get from GO 16. Let me, Okie AG, let me forward that question to one of my friends at the Weather Service who probably can answer this a bit better than I can. And I want to get the exact details of this. So I'll send him this message, and maybe he can put the answer to me in English. I'm going to try it now. I'll see if he's awake. I have friends in all sorts of places that I can get access to. He may have been on the midnight shift, so I don't know if he came home uh, and went to bed, or perhaps he went to church before he goes home and goes to bed. He's in his church choir, I've been. Actually, I've used to be because I haven't gone in a while. But let's. Trying to wait for Facebook to load. It figures this always does this, or at least to get Messenger to load. And it's not loading. All right, so you know what? Let me try it one more time. All right, the message I can't seem to load send that message to him. So as soon as I can I will send it to him, and then just remind me the next time I see you, and I'll give you the answer to your question. Gloria made landfall at 85 miles an hour, Bob at 100. The damage was not as great from Bob because of the fact that as it touched the South Shore, it turned east-northeast and then just kind of straddled it just offshore for Bob. And Gloria, which was a Category 5, Gloria, when you look at the track of Gloria and look at the track of the 38 hurricane, they're very, very close, even in terms of where they reach their peak intensities. The difference is that Gloria didn't accelerate northward the way the 38 hurricane did. It moved slow enough that it was moving over the colder waters of the Atlantic that surround our area here, and it weakened. So by the time it made landfall, it not only came in as a Category 1, but after the center went by, there was very little weather on the south side. The storm was over with. Chicago looks better than New York. Sorry to say, but Chicago looks better. Just your opinion. Oh yeah, that's fine. I'll see. Let me try again. Let me see if I can get that message to come up. And of course, it's not. Something's keeping this from being able to message him. So again, just remind me the next time that you're on. And Angry Ben Scott Briller is my friend Ben Scott, who helps me out with one of my websites, nycweathernow.com. There are some people who think that we're both the same person because I have the Joe Stradamus moniker for myself, but we're not the same person. We are two different people. We have similar qualities, but he's a good guy with a big weather interest, and he's got a meteorology background, and he loves weather. And I needed help to do one of my websites, and he was more than he was willing to give me a hand, and it's worked out quite well. He's having a great time, so he's coming out to the library also to be with me. But check out what he writes. He has a lot of fun. He's a his character is very, very funny that he uses. It reflects some of his personality. He's a good man. He's a police officer by day, and he loves weather. And just check him out on his Facebook page, Angry Ben's Angry Weather, or you can read his stuff at nycweathernow.com. Helene, we covered extensively ADS. So look on. I got to end the video, the live stream now, but just roll back about 10 minutes 10 or 15 minutes. It did a whole thing about Helene. I don't know about those gusts to 70 for you, but you actually have a second gale center that's coming uh, behind it also for Wednesday. So you may have a back-to-back punch there. Helene holding on to tropical characteristics. You're certainly going to have gales touching the south coast of Ireland. Could there be some higher gusts, particularly along coastal areas? Sure, but your area, you know it better than I do. I've never been to Ireland. Please consult with your weather office there, your government weather office, Met Iran or Ariane. Uh, One of you, if you know if I'm saying it right, just let me know if I'm saying it wrong. I was in Bedford, Mass for Bob. It was pretty bad. Still in Southeast Mass, Roselle. That's right. Yeah, it was more southeastern New England, particularly Block Island and southeastern New England, that got hit with a direct pass from Hurricane Bob than Long Island did. All right, folks, I got to end it right here. It's coming up. We're just over an hour on our live stream. Thanks very much for being here today. Just one more time for a bit of a shameless self-promotion for those of you who are interested. I do have my Patreon page. Thank you, Roselle, for hitting Super Chat this morning. Really appreciate it. I do have a platform on Patreon, and for those of you who are interested, you can join me there. There's an app version of it. I seem to have lost the picture of what it looks like, but if you go to patreon.com, and there's a link here on the chat, if you scroll back, you'll be able to find it. We are all weather in a troll-free zone. Satellites, videos, ad-free posts that from my websites that'll be up there too, and you can read about all sorts of things regarding Florence and Helene. Posts. So most of the posts now are going to be exclusively to Patreon members. Some of them will be available elsewhere, but most of the posts now exclusively for Patreon members. So you can take a look at that. And of course, my websites at meteorologistjoechaffee.com, weatherlongisland.com, and Angry Ben has nycweathernow.com. This will be the one live stream for today because I will be at the Deer Park Library. I'm more than likely not going to live stream from there because it just takes there's some logistics I would have to work out, and I'm not feeling 100% confident about doing it this time around, but maybe I'll do it the next time around because I do have more library appearances, and if you can't attend them, we could show them on a live stream. That might be a good thing. And that really pretty much is it. We'll come back tomorrow. Probably we'll do one tomorrow morning. We'll do a YouTube live stream tomorrow morning, and that will be at roughly 9 o'clock Eastern time. So we'll may do a double live stream tomorrow as we start to wrap things up with Florence across the Carolinas and watch the remnants move north. And of course, we'll take a look at what's going on with Helene as it makes its way toward Ireland. Thank you very much for being here today. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.